Grustiny Grustano here, the internet's grustiest member of the Council of Qualgarouche. Yes, we're back with a new goo review of the new JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown collaboration, Scaring the Hose, Volume 1. With a title that gets out ahead of itself so blatantly, one can only expect a cacophonic whirlwind of illusory sound and whimsy, harshly beating your skull membrane against a whirlwind of illusory sound. Hey, Mr. Goo here. Been a while since my last review, right? So I was gonna do the whole Grustiny G. Gressington thing here, where I get an album that I'm excited for and give it a good whirl, only to review songs that do not exist within our current space or time, with outlandish titles such as Parches Parthenon and the Peculiar Pink Paste, or Nipples. But when the track list for this album dropped, I was thoroughly kersplunked. Steppa Pig, Orange Juice Jones, Garbage Pail Kids, and the dual Shut Your Bitch Ass Up / Muddy Waters endeavor? Touche, Peg and Dan, touche. Y'all topped my wildest imagination with this shit. So instead of reviewing fake tracks with really insane titles, I decided to review these real tracks with insane titles before ever even hearing them. After actually having heard the album in full, I shall review my initial review of these songs, just to see if I was even close. Enjoy! Gruster's Review. Gruster's Review. Track 1. Lean Beef Patty. I suppose, fittingly for a review with the actual track titles, start off with a song I've actually heard at this point in time. The first single, Lean Beef Patty. Upon seeing the track list at first, I was in awe of its beauteous absurdity. And I'll admit, I wasn't aware of the person behind this moniker. That disappointment's all on me, because discovering her in this song was like a jolt of flame that ground meat must feel when tossed on a sizzling inferno of a grill. First off, fuck Elon Musk is a pretty apt album starter for today's climate. And continuing on with bars like, while you're stretching the truth in your tweets, I be stretching your girl, Iron Chic, as Peggy ride that wave to Kelly Slater consistency. The sped up sample into booming thrusts of bombacity remind us of the album's title in the best of ways. And old Dan is off again doing old Dan things. Drop it low like you're picking up change, into a succinctly abrupt end fitting for the intro track. I was hyped for this album since Ruminations began, but this first single gives us just enough whistle wetting to really have my appetite grow further. Not much more to say about this one really, still a great zippy start to the album. Track 2, Steppa Pig. I mean, come on. Steppa Pig, come on. Steppa Pig. It's so easy, but it's so fresh, so smart too, in the words of Bruce Chandling. Almost throwing back to, do your chain hang low, do it wobble to the flow. Peg and Dan flip a nostalgic nursery rhyme into a new, that's new with a U and an accent mark, a new hood classic. The Peppa Pig sample is a bit on the nose, but with bars like, Bartleby, don't even start with me, you can tell they've got good reverence for the source material. I actually don't know any like Peppa Pig stuff. I just assume that there's like some guy named Bartleby on it. My brain fried, don't do drugs. Had 2 plugs, one just died. Is the best way I could hope Dan would start a track named after an animated children's program. Everything about this song really just fits the start of this album. It's bright and bubbly with smooth drum fills, and I really love Peg's verses here. Always enjoy Conan's shout out as well. Obviously the more accessible opener sandwiched between the 2 singles, but in a good way, just like a really dope track overall. Track 3, Scaring the Hose. The titular track of titulary titulation, and the only other sounds I've heard of this album at the moment, Peg and Dan really dig into the motif. To think that these are the singles that drop before the album, with this off-kilter sax buffoonery slow bleeding into a garage rock crumbus, like hypnotic clapping persisting through it all, That's a nice cup of goo. We don't want that weird shit no more, indeed, as Dan bounces in that grizzled old man aggression that's as apt as ever. This song also reminds me to mention that this album coming in at 14 tracks but under 40 minutes is a godsend. Seeing more track times around the 2-minute mark than not has my expectations high for some punchy little dippers, just with a little zesty Pop Ranch barbecue zester sauce. The other track we already know the good on, and the barks from Dan, the hook, the hazy rockin', all still good indeed. Track 4, Garbage Pail Kids. Clearly, this will be a fan favorite, as we all know there's nothing more we can all relate to in the era of Goblin Mode than the Garbage Pail Kids. But, like, really, they're just weird little gooey guys, you know? Which is pretty much what comes to mind with a Peg and Dan collaboration. So a shout out to the 80s Cabbage Patch parody and its Peabody nominated film. Fits right in, snug like a bug in a drug. I expect there to be some didgeridoo in the instrumentation, and references to Jeff Goldblum as the Fly. Clearly a fan favorite and Gruster's choice selection indeed. This one fully encapsulates everything that I could have wanted from a song on this album. Not a didgeridoo per se, but the rhythmic chants and steel drum-like baps hit that crevice that I was aiming for. Of course, some retro game-sounding bleeps at the beginning give a nice little juice charge. Peg and Dan both deliver some of my favorite verses from each on the album. Peg comes in electric fast like a jolted Joel. I'ma pull your daddy out his casket being a pinnacle of that visceral rush. And in opposite fashion, Dan feels like a slippery eel slowly working his way through gummed up pipes to jump out the toilet and bite you in the ass. A stone cold degenerate working out with no membership, but it's really eat your ass like I'm cannabis into I show up on your screen like televangelist. That might just be my absolute favorite sneak bar and delivery on the whole album. Track 5, Fentanyl Tester. Okay. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, man. Well, clearly my preview review was more of a cop-out on this one than anything. But it continues the streak of Gruster's choice selections with an instrumental a bit tamer than the name might suggest. This just reminds me that for an album titled the way it is, it's like a lot more fun than you might expect. So as much as the off-kilter instrumental of Garbage Pail Kids and the more aggressive and open-ended lyrics are what I really love, the more straightforward stuff on this album just comes out super dope too. Easily one of my favorite, more subdued instrumentals, especially when the beat simmers down and the boys can really go at it. The flows of both match the pace effortlessly, and it all winds up with a little shake-up of the milkshakes of Kellis. Track 6, Burfict. The exclamation mark makes me feel like this is more of a burping exclaim than a connection to previous Cincinnati Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict, but perhaps it's a bit of both. I'm sensing crab demon allegories, perhaps a Joe's Crab Shack inversion where it's like a feasting baby bird regurgitating seafood into the consumer's gullets or something. This could be describing the lyrics or production, but not both. In a sense, I was kind of correct with the burping exclaim, if by burps we mean regal horns and stadium bass. I feel like there are different types of extravagant, and instead of something that's like the sun-drenched poolside of lackadaisical malaise, this is more of an extravagant that's like, get your ass up, the king is here. Overall, it ends up being one of my least favorite tracks on the album, but that's more of a testament to what I love about everything else, and it's definitely still a great song to bump. The instrumental switch at the start of Peg's verse and Dan's howl of acting like I know who he is and I'm like, who are you? Being some of my favorite parts. Track 7, Shut Yo Bitch Ass Up / Muddy Waters. A 2-titled track under 3 minutes got me thinking this beat switch gonna be nastier than a diaper and carpaccio omelet. Shut your bitch ass up, shut your bitch ass up, or something along those lines. And then we get to take a trip down old Mississippi way for some water the same shade as what they got in Flint. Delicious. And it's like, how's it gonna play out, right? Are these two halves opposite sides of the same coin? Or something completely jarring, right? Will there be a reference to Paul Bufano and Roy Donk as well? Only time can tell. And by time, I mean future me who's about to speak to you right now. Right? No Paul Bufana or Roy Donk allegories, but gotta love a good King of the Hill reference. The beat switch being a bit less magnanimous than I was expecting, ending up more in that two sides of the same coin realm, but that same coin of the repeating oh, 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 blasting through both halves is pretty fucking great. Dan's half is another one of my favorite verses from him on the album. And then Peg sliding across Tom Holland to Andy Kaufman to Shia LaBeouf to Prodigy. It's just a fun little reference web. My one gripe with a song like this is when the first half is what I enjoy more than the second, which is the case here, but it's still overall a Gruster's Choice selection and a favorite track on the album for sure. Track 8, Orange Juice Jones. Ooh boy, this one just exudes the type of energy that you should bump while driving down the freeway, perhaps in a white Ford Bronco on July 17th, 1994. The alliteration of Juice into Jones is one that should not be overlooked, and I assume the instrumentation will match that, with a lot of jazz and J-pop interpolations for sure. Naturally, if any track is going to have a Malcolm X sample to tie everything together, it definitely won't be this one. The first full-on sexual song. I think I was spot on the fucking money with my assessment here. I mean, a succulently soulful sample that would be perfect for blasting on a warm, sunny day, driving down the coast, D-cups and narcotics on the mind, as Dan raps about the same. This one is just smooth and playful, like a little wink and a smile, accentuated by the trolling of including the new message notification sound. And I'd be remiss to not point out how Peg goes from Black AOC in the previous track to Black Marjorie Taylor Greene in this one. Absolutely love how the Black Ben Carson keeps finding fun ways to poke that dead body. Track 9, Kingdom Hearts Key, featuring Redveil. The only track on the album with a listed feature, and the only one directly making a video game reference in the title. I'm curious to see what this key unlocks. As a habitual spammer of Game & Watch Downer, when I try to land, I can always appreciate a good offhand reference to the Keyblades. I haven't played Kingdom Hearts myself since the weird one on 3DS that had like Pokemon monster catching aspects, and I highly doubt that one will come into play. But if there's at least one part where the background music fades out a bit, and we get that classic old Dan howl saying some shit like, drugs got me goofy like I'm goofy in a koofy. Except it would probably sound like, drugs got me goofy like I'm goofy in a koofy. Except, well, you probably wouldn't want to rhyme goofy with goofy again, so it'd be more like, drugs got me loopy like I'm goofy in a koofy. Yeah, that sounds like some shit Danny Brown would say. Alright, so I'll straight up say I can be a Kingdom Hearts hater, for sure. I mean, I enjoyed 2, but otherwise don't really care too much about the series. So maybe it's because I was subconsciously expecting this to be one of my least favorite tracks on the album, but it's a complete flip, and this is absolutely one of my favorites. Super easy Gruster's Choice selection. Also wasn't expecting this many Danity Kane references, but here we are. Peg's production is so varied across the album, filled with so many weirder outings that it kind of feels odd to say it, but this is honestly a top 3 beat of the album for me, and it ain't number 3. The slight switch up before Peg's second verse is heavenly, right before bleeding back into those bubblegum strings and sample as Dan comes in and kills it, ending out with a great contribution from Redveil too. Honestly, it's just a track that hits on all cylinders, and I love it. Track 10, God Loves You. Okay. I thought Fentanyl Tester would be the only one that just evokes pure laughter for me immediately, but this one works too. This might actually be my favorite track title of the whole album, just based off what the possibilities it could be storing. You know, a song titled God Loves You on like a Blake Shelton album is gonna sound very different than a song titled God Loves You on a Peg and Dan album. At least I'd hope so. So my mind is truly intrigued to know what the duo does with this. Could this legitimately be a sobering blast of minimalism and introspection? An actual break to the insanity with some calm reassurance of the love that goes through us all? Or will we get bars about drinking codeine out your grandma's asshole? Only time will tell. And again by time, I mean future Mr. Goo. Hit him up with that knowledge, Goo. Okay, so it's not exactly drinking codeine out of Granny's asshole, but the opening line from Dan being, That pussy on my face, I'm a talk in tongues. It's in the same ballpark. I'm giving myself the point for this one. It is marvelous. Dan's whole verse just being biblical allegories to explain his lecherous acts, ending in his classic chuckle. It's chef's kiss, mwah, perfection. The uplifting gospel and sidewinder bass of the instrumental just give more of that fun I was talking about. It's just a really fun, raunchy song. Track 11, Run the Jewels. I mean, what else could you want, right? Arguably the best duo of recent to form from previous solo hard hitters, combining into a sum that's genuinely greater than its parts. If you're aiming for alternative rap enlightenment as a duo in today's age, I mean, you couldn't really aim higher. Seeing as Dan has been featured on an RTJ album himself in the past, yet Peg hasn't from what I can tell, I have a feeling this one might almost be like a back and forth bars contest to see whose jewels really be running it. Maybe a jank sample of an LP sample, perhaps? Pretty much the only real hiccup I'd say of the album, which isn't too bad a thing since it's the shortest track, but I suppose the title did hype me up a little more for it, and Peg's opening is a fun blast of blaring horns and fuck off swagger, but it just doesn't really give me a feel of anything that I substantially needed that I wasn't getting anywhere else on the album. Although I find it is kind of fun that it takes the scaring part of the title a little literally. It almost feels like a weird spooky beat that would be in a David S. Pumpkins SNL sketch for Halloween or something. Track 12, Jack Harlow Combo Meal. This one also really kills me, especially for its placement on the album, right? Like right after we get Run the Jewels, strictly named after the duo/album series, we get Jack Harlow Combo Meal, named after the rapper and also his commercial tie-in. Juxtaposing these two aspects is just beautiful to me from the outside looking in, as I'd also expect most fans of the former not to be much into the latter, and vice versa. Part of me really hopes that this song is literally just audio from a Jack in the Box commercial. Maybe like the one where they have the little tiny tacos. Okay, spoiler alert, but this ending 3-track run are all Gruster's choice selections, without a doubt. I'm actually very happy that this song was not just audio from a Jack in the Box commercial, because it's definitely one of my favorite tracks overall. The instrumental is sultry with a splash of lounge piano, Dan's verse being another highlight of flow and cadence, and once he makes that call out that he ain't trusting anyone who let Jack Harlow sell them chicken, is just hilarious for the full rest of the track. The smoking something unusual, but for me it's just regular, hazy start of Peg's appearance into that cheesy auto-tuned bridge, right into your path looks like shit, your bag looks like shit, your ass looks like shit. It's just a funny song. As I mentioned before, how we have those opposing styles of extravagance, this one is definitely the good foil to that bombastic, regal Kings of Burfict, with more of that bitches in chlorine off morphine vibes of XXX Dan. Track 13, Ho, Heaven on Earth. I haven't heard this song. I know there was a session snippet that was posted, but I didn't listen to it. And I have no prior knowledge of what's waiting when the album strikes track 13. But for some weird reason, I feel like this is just going to be like almost a split copy of that song from Atrocity Exhibition about getting high, the one featuring Be Real. I don't know, I feel like they're just going to sound very similar. It's not a bad thing. I just want to take the time now to say that Peg's production is like, it's tops. It's just tops. Throughout the project, and here especially, he just puts in stops and pauses at the perfect times. He has such great versatility, from the spacier laid-back sounds to the more raw and jagged edges. It really just deserves so much appreciation. And being the last intimate relations sexual track of the album, it definitely goes out with a bang, being the best for me, dripping with spicy honey and marmalade. Good old steam heat. Peg said it a few times in different ways across the album too, but niggas living vicariously through niggas that don't even know they exist is just such a good exclamation that I'm so happy to hear him reinforce throughout the album. Track 14, Where You Get Your Coke From. An apt inquiry to end the album on. I have a feeling this track will personify the album art more than any other. I mean, if there's not already a 70s blaxploitation film titled Where You Get Your Coke From, somebody's gotta go back in time and make that shit. Or at the least make it nowadays in the vein of I'm gonna get you sucker. I'm also 85% sure that the majority of the lyrics will be Peg and Dan doxing every single coke dealer they've ever interacted with, in an effort to eliminate the competition as they announce their own hybrid cocaine dispensary and gemerald refinery out of your local Pep Boys auto shop. I don't know if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but the final verse slash track on a Dan album is often a favorite of mine, and he absolutely goes out hard here. Peg's start is wonderful too, reminding that he talks how he talks so you can shut up and suck it. And the instrumental is a beautiful distorted twist of light drumming with those interspersed blares of sound that just kick you in the teeth. This one is a glorious Dan epic. Starting off as a failed chemistry experiment, this shit feels like the hybrid era Danny Brown. One of my favorite old school Danny Brown rhyme schemes, paranoid frenetic bars, underground like archaeologists. Yeah. Honestly, could not have hoped for a better ending to the album, especially as the little instrumental bridges really do give that 70s blaxploitation feel of the album art. And then just as abruptly as this album starts, it finishes, ready to get spun again, again, and again. Well, that brings us to the end of my preview review. And because of like editing and stuff, you're also probably at the end of the... And that brings us to the end of my Gruster's review of JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown's Scaring the Hoes, Volume 1. My assessment from the start was close, but not totally wrong, but not also that close, because there was no Bartleby or any references to Jeff Goldblum as the Fly. If I were to list some of my favorite tracks on the album, already have titled them with Gruster's choice, but clearly, Garbage Pail Kids, Fentanyl Tester, Kingdom Hearts Key, Shut Your Bitch Ass Up, Muddy Waters, Jack Harlow Combo Meal, Heaven on Earth, into the outro of Where You Get Your Coke From, are all highlights for sure. Thanks for tuning into this Gruster's review, and until next time, keep it gooey. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Gruster's review. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Gruster's review. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Gruster's review. Oh, those are sirens. Sirens going around.